Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here. And in artificial intelligence news, AI companies are ignoring privacy ethics. And in other news, grass is green, sky is blue, water is wet. Now, here's what's going on, and this is coming from Tom's, and I think that this is actually really important because, quite frankly, the honor system that we've had going on since essentially near the beginning of the internet is now simply being abandoned, and I think that has long-term ramifications for all of us. Now, several AI companies are circumventing the robots exclusion protocol, or it's known as Robots.txt. Now, if you don't know what this is, I'm going to talk about this for a little bit shortly here, because that actually is something that's rather critical on the internet. And if we ignore that, that's an issue, because essentially they're doing this, they're circumventing this to scrape content from websites without permission. Now, this is according to Tollbit, and they are a content licensing startup. Now, the issue has led to disputes between AI firms and publishers. For example, Forbes, in full disclosure, I publish in Forbes. I have an article coming out soon, just as I'm sitting here talking to you. Forbes accused Perplexity of plagiarizing its content. In other words, Perplexity AI was going through and scraping Forbes' data, information, the articles that I've written, as well as many, many others for Forbes, and here we are. Now, Tollbit's letter to the publishers, obtained by Reuters, revealed that many AI agents are simply ignoring that robots.txt standard, basically, which is used to block parts of websites from being crawled. And again, we'll talk about that. So, the company's analytics indicate that a pattern of widespread non-compliance is essentially afoot, as various AIs use data for training without authorization. So, AI search startup Perplexity, in particular, has been accused by Forbes of using its investigative stories in AI-generated summaries without proper attribution or permission. In other words, you ask Perplexity a question, and it's pulling up information straight from Forbes, and it's not saying, "Hey, Nick over at Forbes wrote this," or any one of other Forbes' other writers. So, Perplexity did not comment on these allegations. But let's dive into the heart of the issue here about how we operate online. Now, if you again don't know what the robots protocol is, Robots.txt is simply a text file, like a notepad file, that you can store in a website. Now, this was created in the mid-90s. In other words, this system, this structure, and essentially it's intended to prevent web crawlers from overloading websites. So, for example, I could go on my website and the text file say, "Google, don't search me, don't index me, don't do this." Or I have 1,000 pages, Google, ignore 990 of them, only index these 10, etc., etc. Now, this system essentially has no legal enforcement. It's been an on your honor system that essentially has been respected since, again, the 90s, and now it's gone. Now it's not being respected. And if the AI eventually isn't doing it and there's no legal ramifications beyond just, fist shaking, that's obviously a huge issue, because then what's stopping Google from saying, "Screw it, we'll do the same thing"? Now, publishers are trying to use this protocol to block unauthorized content usage by systems, but again, if they're not honoring it, then what's the point? Now, Tollbit also wrote, quote, "What this means in practical terms is that AI agents from multiple sources, not just one company, are opting to bypass the robots protocol to retrieve content from sites. The more publisher logs we ingest, the more this pattern emerges." Now, some publishers, like the New York Times, have taken legal action against AI companies for copyright infringement. Think about all the other lawsuits from writers and publishers as well. Sarah Silverman, George R.R. Martin suing, I think it was OpenAI, etc., etc. Now, others have opted to negotiate licensing deals. This is an ongoing debate, and it's highlighting the conflicting views on the value and legality of using content to train generative AI. I've talked about this continuously on my radio show, podcast, video, etc., etc. So many AI developers are arguing that accessing content without charge does not violate any laws, unless, of course, it's paid content. And I think this is something that is basically an open book. And the reason why I say that is I've had my own work ripped off before. So my second TED Talk was called The 5 Laws of Cybersecurity. And because it's essentially under the umbrella of TED, I know it's free and open to the world. Anybody can use it, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of nice to get attribution on occasion, like, hey, this came from there, but sometimes it doesn't happen. And I've seen multiple videos where people have used it in their own presentations. A woman in Lesotho around South Africa used it essentially as her own, and I applaud it. I think that's great. Please use that kind of stuff. But if I'm, let's say, writing a book and that's my livelihood and I'm getting paid and that's my income and it's simply being ripped off and given to others, then yeah, I would have a bit of an issue with that. In the same way that, Metallica, for example, decades ago, I believe they sued Napster and some others for essentially giving away for free what essentially is how they make their living. Now, they might be bazillionaires and I might be a thousandaire, but the point is the same. And I think it's one of those things that is just absolutely essentially true in society, that we should honor the wishes of the creator of the content. And if I wanted to do the 5 Laws of Security, which, for example, was originally a Forbes article followed by a TED Talk, if I wanted to do that for profit, I would not have chose the TED platform. I would have done it in some other way. So take it for what it's worth, but I think this is going to be a perpetual issue. And quite frankly, as I've spoken to in other segments, past radio, video segments, that quite frankly, I think the open AIs of the world are trying to change copyright laws to give themselves exceptions, because they're learning on all of our creativity, from small to massive, from 100-aire to millionaire. So here we are. Take that for what it's worth, but that is your news of the day. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. As always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.